Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on our channel. Today, we have a very interesting topic for you. It's about project management, everything you ever wanted to know about project management in terms of what is a project, what are the various frameworks, how should I, which certification do I do, how do I approach my career in project management, then you've come to the right place. If you're looking to make a career change into a profession that's rapidly growing and there's a great demand for project managers worldwide, if you're unemployed and you're looking to get into an industry where there are jobs galore in various sectors across the world, if you are working on a project and would like to make a career in project management, if you are a professional and just looking to upskill and getting registered as a professional in this space, then you've come to the right place. This video is for you. EzySkills is an Australian online learning academy that brings e-learning, educational content, and training to your fingertips. We basically focus on professional skills certification. And what that means is we're targeted towards the professionals in any industry where you're looking to develop project management skills, change management skills, risk management, writing better business cases, for example. There are a whole range of foundation and practitioner courses that we have online. You can visit our website anytime to learn more. Click on the link below. The advantages of e-learning are that you can study at any time at your own convenience on any device anywhere. So for example, if you're pressured at work and you don't have time to commit to a classroom-based course where it takes you away from work and you need to make a commitment for 3 to 5 days, or your boss has said, I can't spare you for 3 to 4 days to work, then e-learning is the way to go. So in terms of project management itself, I wanted to share with you that the profession itself, there's a huge demand for project managers globally. There's a shortage of around projected to be upwards of 90 million over the next 5 to 6 years, on an average shortage of 2.2 million annually across the world. And the reason for this is that there's been a dramatic increase in the number of jobs requiring project-oriented skills. So whether you're in IT, whether you're in construction or in the pharmaceutical industry or any other global industry, projects are the way to go because companies actually invest in projects and through that they expand and grow. The other opportunity is also that the attrition rates that are there in the industry, with a lot of professionals currently retiring from the workforce. So that is adding to that demand. And in countries like India and China and the Middle East, and in Australia in particular, there's a huge demand for project management skills. So today Today, the focus is primarily on project management concepts, to give you a brief overview on what a project is and the various frameworks that organizations use to deliver these projects. We have today Jeff with us, who's our resident expert and trainer. He's an accredited trainer, and he's also a practicing industry professional. And that's the difference that we bring to bear vis-a-vis other training organizations. We actually have trainers who have worked 20, 30, 40 years in industry delivering projects. Jeff is a registered certified practitioner in PRINCE2, PRINCE2 Agile, MSP, MOP, P3O, and a whole range of other professional certifications. He's a fellow of the Australian Institute of Project Management. He's also the member of various global groups that have written standards in PRINCE2, MSP, etc. Jeff is currently the director for Aspire Australasia, and he's also a co-founder for EzySkills. Welcome, Jeff.
Thanks, Glenn. All right, so I thought I'd start with talking about why organisations use projects. Bottom line is organisations run projects to acquire assets or change assets or remove assets. Project management sometimes isn't the answer. So really an organisation needs to understand the nature of what they're trying to do and then select the most appropriate method. How do they do that? And I've come up with this approach where you look at the clarity or lack of clarity around scope and objectives, and then the tolerance for change, whether that tolerance is very small or zero, or it's very high and expected. Some numbers here. On the left, we've got something that might happen in a factory that's able to produce many products, and we simply want to retool to move from one product to a different product. But that's happening. That happens probably many times a day or a week. It's a very known thing. So we could actually use techniques of pure operations on the left. On the far right, where we're talking about a high degree of uncertainty about objectives or scope. We may not know what the end product is when we start. So our tolerance for change is very broad. Pure agile product development techniques like Scrum are very useful in that space. The sweet spot for project management is in the middle, where the scope and objectives are reasonably well known, where the tolerance for change is, there is some tolerance for change. So we can think about a firm fixed price construction project, building a factory, for example, or building a railway line, or building a software system, something like that. There are middle grounds between these two. So, for example, if on the left, where some change is going to be undertaken in the operational space, in a factory, for example, they might want to upgrade their forklifts, for example, but there might be so many of them, there's a bit of risk in doing that. So they might projectize that. They'll take many concepts from pure project management, wrap it around what they usually do about changing their assets, and then get better control of it. The sweet spot on the right, product development techniques like Scrum don't scale particularly well. One approach to scaling pure agile product development techniques is something called agile project management, which brings many of the core concepts of pure project management to the table, but is agile friendly and agile aware.
Yeah. So the clear takeaway from all of this, Jeff, is that projects can be many types across all organizations for different purposes.
Well, from this slide, the takeaway is don't assume that project management is always the answer.
Okay.
Sometimes it's not. We also know that we can group initiatives, group projects into programs and portfolios. And particularly many large organisations are moving into program management. They're trying to get economies of scale and better governance and oversight over their projects by moving up that hierarchy. We can then ask a general question, what is a project? Many times all people talk about projects and everyone's nodding their head, but they're actually thinking different things. More often than not, when we talk about definitions of projects, you'll see people talking about the scope of work or cost and duration or some other things like this. But I think to get the answer, what is a project, you really need to know who's asking. One way to look at it is to think about the different views of, for example, a client. The client might want their objectives met. They might they'll pay for this project, certainly, so they're interested in the cost, but they should probably be more interested in the value proposition. What are we going to get out of running this project? Compare that with the end user view. What they're probably interested in is the products that the project will deliver to them to use in the live environment and the quality around those products. These other criteria probably don't matter to them at all. Another way to look at this is to slice and dice it by the different management layers associated with running projects. Corporate, they'll take the client view, focus on objectives and the value proposition. Governance and management, project management is usually measured on time, on budget delivery. However, those metrics are awful metrics to use with respect to projects. If you're taking the view of governance or corporate, this value proposition is a much more valuable way of looking at success. Down at the product layer, and this is generally the interaction between supply view and product and the project, they really want to know about specification of products. They will come to the table with the delivery approach. They need to know what the customer's quality requirements are, and they want to know how much time I have and what I'll be paid to do this work. So the value proposition for them is the profit. So we need to really understand who's asking that question, what is a project, before we can come up with a reasonable answer for them, being aware that the answer differs depending on who the stakeholder is. Okay. Another thing I thought might be useful is people say, well, what sort of, I can run projects. Well, that's true. I came up with this list of project domains, which I thought was quite useful to talk about. Most project managers, or many project managers, spend their entire careers within one of these domains, and they actually have no experience in running projects in any other domain. I've been fortunate enough to run projects in probably 5 or 6 of these domains. That gives me a I think, a much broader view about what project management is and how to adjust myself and my techniques to suit these things. Each of these domains comes with its own life cycles and names for phases, similar terminology for roles and other things associated with these things, common risks and mitigations and areas of uncertainty. So that's why many organisations, when they're seeking a project manager, they want someone who has experience in a particular domain. It's not to say a really good project manager couldn't run projects across many domains. In fact, many people can do that. So are all projects the same? Well, some parts are and some parts aren't. If we think about a domain, we can say that projects within a particular domain, many of the aspects are the same, the names and staging of the product, of the stages or phases, or the types of products being produced, the sorts of stakeholders being involved. They'll probably be similar within a domain. Then we can abstract above that pure project management concepts, planning, resourcing, scheduling, risk management, scope change, stakeholder engagement, communication, status reporting. The thing about all of these things is you need to tailor them both to suit the specifics of an individual project. So good project management techniques actually say that. They say every project is unique and the project manager needs to understand how each project is different from anything else they might have run in the past, and then adjust their management approach to suit the nature of the specific project in both of these aspects, the project management aspect and the domain-specific aspect. I thought I'd just share a little bit about the development of project management as a knowledge base. Some parts of project management have been around for more than 100 years. Gantt charts were developed to actually help the United States industrialise before it entered into the First World War. In the Second World War, particularly Allied developments to do with things like atomic weapons and radar-guided anti-aircraft defence systems. It's where concepts like incremental development and parallel development originated. Very expensive. You have to really understand why you use those techniques. And I think this is the origin of Agile, which is interesting. If we move through the timeline into the 70s, techniques like PERT, project evaluation review technique, and then the critical path method or critical path analysis originated in the 1970s. Interestingly, PERT originated in the United States Navy, and the CPM originated in private organisations in the United States. These days, most people don't use those techniques directly. They would use a software scheduling tool like Microsoft Project, and these techniques are embedded in those tools. Around about in the 70s, particularly in the US military, which was spending an enormous amount of money on defence projects, the need to actually codify or come up with a standard approach to projects was seen. That was the emergence of the first US military standard on project management. In the 1980s, many techniques were developed to support better approaches to project management. And in fact, many organisations, particularly the large consulting organisations, developed their proprietary techniques. So they're all different techniques, different terminology, and so on. Many techniques out there. And the issue for many organisations is how do I choose? What should I spend my money on? And that motivated the need to actually produce standard approaches. So in the 1990s, methods like PRINCE2 and the APMBoK in the UK emerged. The PMBok, the project management body of knowledge in the United States, emerged. The PMBok, or at least a part of the PMBok, became part of the American, the ANSI standard for project management. And in the late 1990s, early 2000s, management techniques for program and portfolio management emerged. So MSP is a program management method, MOP is a portfolio management method. In the 2010s, the development of project management methods continued. Agile PM is an agile project management method. ISO, the very first global standard in project management, ISO 21500 was developed. And in 2014, something called the Praxis Framework emerged in the UK, sponsored by the UK APM Association for Project Management. So what I thought we might do now is just talk about some of these globally used standard methods. The first one I'll talk about is PRINCE2. Current publisher is a group called Axelos, which is 49% owned by the UK government. PRINCE, the original PRINCE method, and its second iteration called PRINCE2 are owned by the UK government. Axelos is still 49% owned by UK government. Actually, up to the sixth version of PRINCE2, I thought it'd be useful to talk about the coverage and the audience of these methods. And I've broken the audience up into corporate, the governance layer of a project, and then the project management layer. So PRINCE2 addresses the needs of all three of these layers. And then if we think about coverage, many project management methods focus on the delivery of projects. PRINCE2 also says a whole lot about pre-project work to make sure that the right projects are actually commissioned. And PRINCE2 also talks about the need for post-project work, in particular to make sure that operational performance remains adequate and the expected benefits are actually realised. So from those ticks, you could say that PRINCE2 is a really good basis for a corporate approach to project management. In terms of the components of PRINCE2, there are 7 principles. So PRINCE2 is a principles-based approach. That has some value because it means PRINCE2 can be used in any environment for any project of any size because it's principles-based. PRINCE2 does have a process model which needs to be tailored to suit the needs of an individual project. And PRINCE2 provides what it calls 7 themes. These are knowledge areas, guidance on critical aspects of every project, which includes things like business case, risk planning, and so on. The current version of PRINCE2 establishes some minimum requirements for each of the 7 themes. You have to justify a project. Sometimes that means you need a document called a business case, but as long as you can justify it, you're still running according to PRINCE2. And tailoring is expected. PRINCE2 is always expected that the method should be tailored to suit the project and not the other way around. Globally, PRINCE2 is used globally. It's heavily used in the UK, across Europe, the Netherlands, Italy, Spain, many other parts of Europe. It's used in Australia, New Zealand. It's used, I've heard of its use globally for all sorts of things. And it can be used for any size of project in any domain. So it's a really useful technique. Okay, that's PRINCE2. Let's look at the project management body of knowledge published by the Project Management Institute in the UK. The current version is the 6th edition, published about 4 years ago. The project management body of knowledge is a collection of guidance focused on the needs of a project manager. That's what it's called. That's its sweet spot. It's helping project managers. You can see that it really doesn't say very much at all about corporate or project governance. Organisations that use the PMBok to run projects need to augment the PMBok with things like steering committees for project governance and other links into corporate controls. They're not actually formally part of the PMBok. In terms of coverage, the PMBok is really focused on delivery. It says not much at all about pre-project work. So there is a risk that projects that probably shouldn't be started might be charted and then start before people realise this isn't the right sort of projects for us to be running. The PMBok does talk about benefits, but it doesn't provide any advice on how to follow up and ensure that the whatever the project delivers is of use in the live environment and is delivering the benefits that were expected of it. So it's personal opinion. I don't think the PMBok is a good basis for a corporate project management method. However, I think qualification in the PMBok for a project manager is a good adjunct to an organisational project management method based on PRINCE2. PMBok is globally used, of course. It's focused on construction and engineering projects. A lot of software development firms use it. In terms of its components, it has the current version has 7 process groups consisting of 47 processes, so very detailed, and then 10 knowledge areas covering most of the things that PRINCE2 talks about. Before I go, I'll just talk about the new edition of PMBok that's being developed. I have seen an exposure draft, an early edition of the 7th edition, which is expected to be released later this year. It will be principles based, and for those who know the previous versions of the PMBok, what I believe is about to happen is that the process groups will be removed and the knowledge areas will be reformatted into 8 performance domains. So that sort of knowledge will still be there. This is a major rewrite. It's not yet finalised, so we'll actually see what the final result will be. It's up to the PMI and the people contributing to it. The APMBoK is different to the previous 2 methods I've talked about. It does, in terms of audience, it does address the needs of corporate governance, project governance, and the project manager. Its primary focus is on delivery. It does say some things about pre-project work and post-project assessment of the success or otherwise of the project. Its take-up is mainly in the UK. Its core components, it's got 4 major sections. So it provides a whole lot of guidance on strategic implementation, life cycle options for setting up projects and governance frameworks for projects, which is really useful. It talks about preparing for the change in terms of shaping life cycles, setting up assurance and learning frameworks so we can actually continually improve as we go. But then how do we transition the products of a project into live use? It provides a lot of advice, which I think is really useful on people and behaviours in terms of stakeholders and their expectations, leadership of teams, and general project management professionalism. Some of these things, you would, if you're a member of a professional institute frameworks would focus on professionalism. So I think this is quite useful in a body, and I'll talk about that as well. And then the APMBoK talks about deployment. So how do we specify outputs of projects? How do we plan delivery? How do we set up project controls? So this is the delivery focus of the APMBoK. I actually think a professional project manager would benefit considerably by obtaining a copy of the APMBoK and reading it. It's a really useful publication. Another thing that's emerged in the UK, so it's actually sponsored by the APMBoK. It's an adjunct. It's sponsored by the APM. This is a Praxis Framework is actually an adjunct to the APMBoK. It's a free framework. It's free to use. You simply go onto the Praxis Framework website and you can download and access everything. So it's free to use and it's community driven. Anyone who's a practicing project manager could contribute to the Praxis Framework. Its audience is broad. It does address the needs of corporate governance, project governance, and project managers. And its coverage, it does talk about the need to very carefully think about a project and the project concept before you get into delivery. And it spends time thinking about what should happen after the final products of a project have been delivered in order to ensure organisational value is realised. Take up its early days for the Praxis Framework. In Australia, the Australian Institute of Project Management actually 2 years ago used the Praxis Framework to replace the PMBok, the American project management body of knowledge, as its expected body of knowledge of a practicing project manager in its competency framework. And several large organisations in Australia are actually taking up the Praxis Framework as their project management framework. In terms of components, Praxis Framework scope is much broader than any other of the other frameworks. It provides a set of knowledge areas focus on governance, professional, interpersonal skills, and what it calls the 6 delivery management functions. Then it goes into a method discussion with 12 processes which provide practical advice on how to actually implement the delivery management functions. And it talks about various documents that a project manager might find useful, like scope documents, various types of plans, and various types of control documents like risk registers and so on. The interesting extensions to the Praxis Framework, it comes with its own competency framework. This is a framework to assess the competency of an individual project manager. Professional project management institutes build their own, have in the past built their own competency frameworks. but the Praxis Framework comes with one out of the box. The other extension is that the Praxis Framework provides an organisational capability and maturity framework. So I've been involved with OPM3 from the PMI and something called P3M3 from Excelos. They're capability and maturity assessment frameworks. The Praxis Framework comes with a capable organisational capability and maturity framework built in. It's not something that has to be added onto it. The community-driven aspect and part of the Praxis Framework that I think most practitioners find most useful is an expanding library of resources. You want to find out about things like PERT or CPM or critical chain or any other project management technique, you just look in the library. And again, the library is free to access. It's just an expanding resource for the profession. So I think the early days for Praxis Framework, but I think it's heading in the right direction. Okay, Glenn, that's the end of my presentation.
Right. Thanks, Jeff. That was a fantastic overview of all the project management framework that exists today. I got a couple of questions for you. One is from an organizational perspective. In choosing a framework to be implemented within an organization, what sort of decision-making criteria should one use to arrive at a framework that suits the organization?
It depends. It's one of those questions where the answer is it depends. If the organisation has deep history with one of these frameworks, you'd have to think of it very carefully before you changed. However, having said that, I'll just tell you a story of my experience. I once had working for a consulting firm, I had two requests for tender across my desk in the same week. One was from an organisation running the PMBok, and they said, we don't think the PMBok is working for us. We want to move to PRINCE2, can you help? And the other request for tender said, we are a PRINCE2 organisation, we use PRINCE2, we don't think it's working for us. We want to use the PMBok. My general answer to both of them is you're probably asking the wrong questions. You're probably not really understanding what you're asking for. So the answer would be, if you wanted to improve the competency of an individual project manager, PMBok is as good as any, or the Praxis Framework in terms of delivery skills needed, how to actually deliver, perform on the job. If you're actually wanting an organisational project management framework, PRINCE2 is currently the best in the market. It's the core of an organisational project management framework. Praxis Framework will eventually get there. Interestingly enough, the PMBok actually says, when you read it, that a project manager, a professional project manager who would expect to use the PMBok guidance in delivery should use what PMBok calls organisational process assets, which include corporate project management frameworks. So PMBok actually says a PMBok trained project manager really needs to know how to work with a corporate project management framework built around PRINCE2 or built around any other project delivery framework. They need to know how to work within that framework. So when I was hiring project managers, what would I be looking for? Clearly, I want someone who knows. I've always worked in organisations, most organisations which use PRINCE2 as the corporate governance framework, corporate project management framework. So I would want someone who had experience in working with PRINCE2. And for really, really large and complex projects, I would want someone who had, the PMI has a competency assessment called a PMP, a project management professional certification. I would want a project manager with a PMP. So I want both. I want the best of both worlds. These days, I might say, well, I want, if they don't have a PMP, well, I would say, if they were a member of the Australian Institute of Project Management, show me your Reg PM certification. Show me your professional certification, your competency. So someone where you'll be peer assessed and your peers say you are a competent project manager. I want to see something like that. But still, I would want that person to be able to work within a PRINCE2 or a Praxis framework.
So that leads me into the next question from a
Yep.
person seeking to get into the field of project management and make project
Yep.
management a career. There is a feeling today in industry that you need to be across many frameworks because there are agile frameworks, there is PRINCE2, there's PMBok, there is Praxis, and projects require delivery. Projects require you to understand multiple frameworks within an organization, and some organizations have one or two frameworks to deliver projects based on the type of project. So what sort of guidance would you give individuals who are looking to get certified in project management? Pick one or pick multiple and understand all?
I think you've got to pick your battles. It would be again, the answer is it depends. If the person is not currently a project manager who's trying to get into the profession, pick one and learn it really well. Pick one that your potential employers are using, and then learn it really, really well. And then try and run some projects using that method. Even if it's in a not-for-profit organisation, even if you do it for free, just use it. It'll give you some credibility if you've actually used the framework. Glenn, when you said what should someone who wants to make project management a career do, I would say never sit on your laurels. You should always be extending your scope. You should find the sorts of domains that project management is being used in they're expanding every year. And the ways and the sorts of projects that are being run, the complexity of project is increasing. If you know one project management method, you're probably counting yourself out of that growth. So a professional project manager should be expanding their knowledge base. And given what I've said about the Praxis Framework, this one is really useful for anyone to know. And the beauty about the Praxis Framework is you can just get onto the website and explore. It talks about many of the aspects that are incorporated into PRINCE2, the project management method, MSP, program management method, various portfolio management methods. In fact, the Praxis Framework, it's not just a project management method, it's a program management method or a portfolio management method as well. So it's vertically integrated in that way. So
right. And there is one. Yeah, sorry. There is one more question which I wanted to ask, and that was around the fact that people have the belief that they've been working as part of a project team, and over the years they build their skills in project management. Is that sort of approach good? A good long-term approach for career development in project management, or do you see that certification plays an important role in this process, along with experience while while progressing your project management career?
Yeah. So if you're working in an organisation whose prime focus is in project management, the risk you have by staying in the same role for many, many years is you're actually not developing as a professional. You might be taking on different size projects, but they're sort of the same projects. Compare that with someone who's working in a project management organisation, an organisation whose focus is running projects. So every project you run will be different. That by itself would mean I'm expanding my catalogue of projects that I know how to run. Certification is very important. It's evidence that you actually know a method in detail. Certifications, you can read up about a method so you know about a method. Certification is evidence to a potential employer that you know that method in detail. You know how the various parts of the method integrate internally, and you know how to tailor the method and integrate it into other parts of the corporate environment. So that's really what certification should mean. And as a professional trying to build a career, I think getting certified in new areas of project management every couple of years, do something more, add something more to your portfolio of skills. For example, probably 5 years ago, I started looking into agile project management and agile product development techniques like Scrum to expand my portfolio of skills so I could actually run some agile projects. I've run agile projects in the past, but I needed a certification to prove that. Interestingly, I've run projects for 45 years and never had a certification. So one of the reasons I picked up my first PRINCE2 certification was to gain some credibility when I'm competing with other people, for roles. So certification actually helps someone get a job, first job in project management. It helps them move around to get their next job. But then as a professional, I think certification is evidence that you're actually a practicing professional. You're actually building your professional skill set by adding certifications to your portfolio.
Okay. Thanks, Jeff. Thanks so much for sharing your experience, your wealth of knowledge on the frameworks, and walking us through the various frameworks itself and the differences between them and the applications of them to individuals and organizations. So thanks for your time. If you've liked this video, please share and follow or comment. Click on the link to our website below and learn more about the courses we have to offer. Subscribe to our newsletter to learn about our special training offers and to be alerted for articles on our blog on trending topics in business and technology written by industry experts and practitioners. Learn, upskill, get certified, and see you soon. Thanks, everyone.